Well, here we are. We're live. Welcome to the third live stream. And we've got quite an interesting show today, I think. I say it's interesting. And the reason being is we've got three guests on today's show. And the point and the continuing drive of what we're doing is to look to wean businesses, B2B businesses, off cold calling and move them to a far more effective way of generating new business. And to do that, it requires some, you could say, a bit of ingenuity, a bit of technical know-how, but the results from it are breathtaking, unlike anything that any B2B organisation has ever experienced before. And one of the fundamental problems is that within business and selling, when it's business to consumer, it's measured in millions of people that you have access to. B2B, it's thousands. And so it's a numbers game. We know this is a numbers game, but we're here to talk about what the numbers are. And so what I'm going to do, I'll play our brief intro and I'll introduce you to everyone else. Okay, well, here's the team. I think the easiest thing to do first is just to explain. We're going to have a four-way conversation about how marketing has been done, how B2B marketing has been done, how telesales has affected everybody and how it's being used, and ultimately looking at how businesses acquire the data in order to call people, and the experiences that people have had and that people have in general when it comes to businesses trying to generate new business. So I'm not going to, there's more than enough information on our website about everything that we do, so we're going to get straight into it. And I think if we kick off with, I would say, introductions. So Liz, why don't you just share briefly who you are and what you do?
Okay, I'm Liz Main. I currently work for a pretty large international software company. Previously, I spent about 15 years in telecom sales, selling phone systems, voice recording solutions, and have done the cold calling on the phone, not so much going out and knocking on doors, but certainly doing telesales. And now I am on the receiving end predominantly of people making phone calls, because I'm the business support manager. So that's me.
Okay, Dean?
Yeah, so I've been in the sales, well, I've got over 10 years of experience in direct sales, predominantly in B2B. I did start off door to door, so I do have the hustle culture as part of my DNA, and I've done the jobs where I've been full-time teleprospecting, from 8 in the morning till 6 in the evening some days. So I've done the apprenticeship, if you will, and currently I'm B2B in the enterprise e-commerce space, selling to online retailers.
Right, okay, cool. And Alex?
Hi, yes, I'm Alex. So I work for MarketScan. We are a B2B data provider. So we've been around since 1982, so we're quite long in the tooth. And what we like to do is help people and talk people through how they can use their lists to the best benefit. So with a mixture of different marketing channels. So we have lots of customers that are doing the telemarketing alone, but then there's others that are doing multi-channel, which I think today's conversation is going to fit quite nicely into.
Yeah, cool. Well, I mean, we've between all four of us, we talked about marketing, about the methods that are adopted and that exist, but there's never been any change, and we've kind of analysed it almost to death, but to understand why it is what it is and where it stemmed from, and I've kind of written about it in the past about, it started in the 1950s when people were doing door-to-door cold calling, and then it moved into telesales and so on, and really that model hasn't changed a great deal, even when people want to they want email to work. They want it to work to the best of their advantage. And I think it's all because of B2C. B2C have a kind of success ratios that B2B want to have for themselves as well. But they self-sabotage in the way that they do it by using marketing automation and hiding all their content behind email forms, which people end up either not getting access to or not even being able to find them on Google because they're all hidden. So it's kind of like the browbeating process of telesales. I mean, Liz, you get a few calls per day.
Yeah, I do, and I think, I mean, obviously more so now than ever before because all of our team are working from home, so that's one obstacle to overcome. But I have heard every tactic in the book. I mean, I am astonished at the way people will try to get past the gatekeeper. And so, I mean, some of the people that I speak to, sometimes they get very upset with me, very angry with me, and moody with me like a teenager, as if that's going to persuade them to transfer their call. Never in a million years. But I also get, I mean, some of the most memorable ones, we were chatting about this yesterday, some of the most memorable ones I've had. I had the guy that told me he couldn't possibly send me any information because I just simply wouldn't understand, and it would take him too long to put an email together and explain it to me. And 14 and a half minutes later, because now they've become sport and everybody's sitting in the office, we all think this is hilarious. 14 and a half minutes later, he's still talking to me, and I have basically stopped listening until the point I just had to put the phone down because he just wouldn't stop talking. So that's tenacious for you, but tenacious to the point of just being ridiculous. I get the people that pretend to be somebody else. I had the guy phoned me up and said he was one of our sales guys who's actually based in the US, and he needed the number for one of our VP of sales in the UK, and he really needed to speak to him. He was getting on a plane and hadn't got his number, and I was like, no, and actually the person you're pretending to be is American and you're not American. So he hung up on me. So I've had, I have had a few people try to contact me, and I think, that you come to the conclusion that actually you can try every tactic in the book, but you are always going to come across somebody like me, somebody who, and sometimes I'm nice to people, I am, because I've done the job. I know how hard it is. And sometimes I will talk to people, and maybe I'll lull them into a false sense of security. I don't know. But I am nice to people, but there are certain tactics that, frankly, oh, can you give me their mobile number? No, it's not. No, you're not having a mobile number. And so more so now than ever before, because a lot of people are working from home, people are just not getting through. It's very, very difficult. And I appreciate how hard it is, but
do you get how many calls
you use on me, I'm not falling for it.
Do you get many calls? How many calls do you get? I mean,
before we went into lockdown, I would probably get maybe half a dozen calls a day, at least.
Right.
And prior to that, in different organisations, I would get more. I will get more than that. But I think the tactics have now become a bit more aggressive, and have become more aggressive, I would say, in the last 3 to 4 years. People are really, in fact, I had one guy phone quite a long time ago. And he said, oh, could I speak to Andy, please? And I said, Andy? And he was like, yeah, Andy Long. And I'm like, okay. He said, I've spoken to him before. I've spoken to him about pensions. And I was like, oh, really? He said, oh, yeah, like he was really good friends with him. And I said, well, first of all, if you had spoken to him, you would know nobody ever calls him Andy, ever. So I know you've not spoken to him before. You put the phone down on me. So I get a lot of hang-ups, but just because they're not going to get through. But I do probably get about half a dozen calls a day.
And what's the kind of the general consensus or the instructions from like senior management or other people? What's their view on?
I don't want to talk to that person, and I actually find that even when I was, on the one hand it annoys me, but on the other hand I see why they do it. They fill a form in, they download a white paper or a document or whatever on somebody's website. They never put their mobile number. They always put the main office number. So that to me is just like, you don't want to speak to them, because otherwise you give your mobile number. If you genuinely wanted to call back, you would give a mobile number. And because they don't, it's because they can't get the information that they want without giving a number. Yeah. And so they give the main office number. Why not? And but I don't know. The instruction is don't give out any. You don't give out any confidential, which I consider to be confidential. Mobile number. I give out my email address. I don't mind people badgering me, but I do mind them badgering other members of staff that have got better things to do than field calls and field emails. So that's why I don't put them through. It's you just don't. And I even found that when I was on the receiving it, when I was doing the telesales, it was like, no, I can't put you through, or I can't give you any information. I can't confirm an email address. We have a policy of we don't take cold calls. That's it. And there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
I'm sure Dean finds that sometimes that, the gatekeeper is like, it doesn't matter how good you are, you won't get past that gatekeeper in many ways.
Yeah.
Especially on the cold call, I would say.
Dean, what's your take on it? What kind of problems did you encounter pre-2020 lockdown, and has that changed over the past 12 months, whatever months, it is 12 months, isn't it?
Yeah, no, fair. It feels like longer, doesn't it? So I can understand why you're trying to count the months there. But I've got quite a different answer to a lot of people. I find it's about the same now. The first lockdown, there was initial shell shock period where everyone just ran for cover and everything was literally on the quiet. But right now, I'm finding it's pretty much the same as it was pre-pandemic, in my opinion, because I was struggling to get people on the phone then. And the conversations I'm having, the meetings I'm having, the engagement I'm having in sales is pretty much at the same level it was pre-pandemic. So I know that there are ways for lead generation, and obviously, like some of the ideas we're discussing on these sort of shows, it is testament to the fact that business can still move forward in these times. But in terms of the phone and cold calling, I was definitely finding it wasn't productive. So if I go back to say 2013, 2014, I was full-time banging the phones 9 till 5 every single day, and it worked. It worked a treat. I was filling up pipelines, filling up opportunities. Things were moving, and I'm one of those people that I don't mind putting the work in as long as I can see the fruits of the labour, so to speak.
Yeah.
But for a long time, it's just not been viable. It's just not worked, and the old sort of mentality of, well, just do more, just do more, just do more. I know one of the topics we discuss a lot is how do you scale something. Just doing more isn't really that smart a way to scale something. There comes a point where what more can you do? And to give some examples, and this is like going back to maybe 12, 18 months before the first lockdown, I was calling up teams and they were basically telling me that there's no desk phones in the office. If you want to speak to the relevant people, you need to have their mobiles. That was just a fact. And in some of the bigger brands that I was trying to get through to, in the bigger companies, their reception team was changing quite regularly. Quite often, their reception team was from a recruitment agency, and you might say, "Has Derek walked past you this morning?" And they'd be like, "Well, I don't even know what Derek looks like. I've only got a list of names in front of me, and this is all I'm allowed to do." And by default, if anyone had any decision-making potential or decision-making capabilities, they're not going to be on that list. And like to sort of coin a phrase of like recent comedy, computer says no. Like, can I speak to Mr. Jones? Computer says no. Like
Yeah.
that is it. Like there was no way forward, and you couldn't get any more information out of the reception team. Like Liz, you know, she's quite professional. She's been around. She knows her company. So if you speak to a Liz nicely, I think you can get a lot of information. But a lot of these reception teams, they deliberately don't know anything because they don't actually work for the company. Therefore, it doesn't matter how
plausible deniability, Dean.
it doesn't matter how
If you
skilled
don't
you are.
know the information, you can't pass it on. Don't give the receptionist any information. She can't, then she can't share it.
100%. It doesn't matter how skilled you are at grilling people. If someone doesn't know something, you can't get it out of them. You know, and I've got loads of opinions for speaking to PAs and things because I think they're absolutely fantastic advocates if you speak to them nicely. And then you can get a lot of information, but that's a completely different story. Now you're dealing with people who actually understand the business. Quite often, the people who answer the switchboard numbers, and it's not judging them because they're not smart people. It's just that they don't know the company, and they never told anything about the company. So how would they be able to share any information? So to cut a long story short, I think I've gone around the houses there. I'm finding the success of the telephone is exactly the same now as it was pre-pandemic. But I think what's happened is now there's a light shone on it, and everyone's suddenly going, "Oh, it doesn't work. It didn't work before." But now all of a sudden, people are a bit more accepting of the fact and starting a discussion around it.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, I have I say a preconceived idea. It's not but the tools that people have got to use are all pretty standard in many companies. You know, you've got Salesforce, you've got automation, and so on. Is it commonplace to have dialing from the screen?
Not commonplace for me and the sort of places I've worked in, but I'm aware of sort of industries where it is commonplace, and I'm not aware of it really being any more successful. I think what I tend to find is in all of these sort of roles like SDRs and BDRs, it's a real high turnover of individuals. It's individuals, you know, looking to cut their teeth in the sales environment, and without being unfair, they're never going to find out if they're good at sales in these sort of environments because it's just a case of keep calling. 3 months later, get rid of him, get another one in. And you can tell by the high turnover, and I think we've had this discussion many a time in sales and marketing, people look at the high turnover like the individuals were wrong. Sometimes you have to look at the high turnover and think, well, maybe it was just never going to work. And I do find from a prospecting point of view, they just burn people out. They just get another one.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I've written about this before, that just because a company exists and the managing director says this is a great product doesn't mean it's a great product. And then he goes and throws all those financial resources at the company to get the company to make sales of those products, and they do everything they possibly can to begin with, sell to their friends and family. It peaks and then troughs, because then they have to go and sell it properly, and it might not happen, and they don't adopt any kind of strategy to it. But they keep saying, right, we'll just get on the phone. That's the basic thing that I understand is telesales. So we keep everybody doing telesales, and that's as far as it goes. I mean, Alex, you and I had talked about kind of at length about the kind of the CMO type role and what happens within that kind of environment, and that they tend to do the same thing over and over. You know, the new person comes in, goes through the persona process, and then repeat. You know,
absolutely. I mean, on the cold calling front, I mean, when I joined the business 18 months ago, did lots of research to see what was happening with the cold calling that everyone was doing, and it really wasn't effective. So back end of 2019, early 2020, all cold calling stopped, and it was just a real focus on different marketing channels, different ways of connecting with people. So sessions like this, other seminars that we ran, the team run the seminars, the team go on networking, and it's getting your name out and being more personable, and getting across the fact that we're not just data, we're here with other ideas, other solutions, other ways to help you get the results that you want, need, require. And I wouldn't say necessarily that cold calling is dead, but there are certain pockets where it's definitely not going to work. Exactly what Liz has talked about. People are going to go and call the bigger organisations. It's going to be more and more challenging to get through that gatekeeper, and that is a bind. But we've seen our number of dials go down with not cold calling, but the amount of time on the phone increase. Because they're better conversations. It's speaking to people that we've had conversations with in the past. It's making sure that our current customers are getting the results that they need from their data sets. It's talk to people who have inquired at some point, at any point, or downloaded something and given us some direct communication. And then we're having those conversations. We've got not a full-on automated stack, but we've got a reasonable amount set up, enough that we can then be proactive on the phone, because yes, cold calling might be dead, but people buy from people. You still need to have that human interaction to be able
absolutely.
to, not just about ensuring that you're getting the most amount of revenue, because it's not just about that, but it's about getting the most amount of value across to your prospects and making sure that they are getting value from your offering, which is, from my perspective, key. I
mean, I think that's why this whole approach to live streaming and looking at how do you start the conversation, how do you even get to a point where you can say, hey, here we are, come and have a look. It's really difficult. It's impossible to do that in any other way, except chucking loads of information, typically via email, to prospective customers. You can do the manual stuff and go out and meet them and so on, but it's we were talking, Liz and I were talking the other day about the numbers involved in communicating, in the ability to communicate with someone. And if you've got someone that's doing any form of telesales from cold, with a company that's going since 1982, you're going to have lots of different people that you've spoken to over the past 30 years, but or more. If you're going to do cold calling, if you could only phone, we did this we took away lunch and took away comfort breaks and took away that time between 9 and 10 and the last hour of the day, and said, well, that's what you got to play with. And it worked out to about 60 calls a day if someone was banging the phones. But if we've got this thing about 100 to 1 shot to get through to someone, to find someone that's actually interested, and looking at that process and being able to reach any number of people. Of 100 people, you might get through to 10, and of those 10, 1 might be interested. But that's 100 to 1. But if you're only ringing 60 people a day, it takes you 5 days to get through to however many people. If the ratio has changed in terms of, your argument, Dean, about it's not really changed at all, and other people have said, well, it could be 200 to 1, 300 to 1 because of lockdown and people not being around. So it's kind of looking at the ratios of a company's ability to connect with outside or uncontacted people, and I just see it being nigh on impossible. And the only thing the directors seem to know, or most directors seem to know, is cold calling. That's the only way we can do it. We can invest in MarTech and have a MarTech stack, with it, whether it's Par.Eloqua or Marketo or whatever, with demand based and all the ABM stuff and everything else kicked into it and nailed down, and all the different peripherals you can add into it. But it's going through that same thing again for people. And like you said, people buy people. It's all about being personable. I think we were talking the other day. So if you get
so many variables, though, aren't there? When you phone people, there are so many reasons why that person can't answer the phone, and it might not just be because we don't put calls through. That person's in the meeting, he's talking to somebody, he's away from the office, he's off sick. He's just walked away from his desk for a moment. Or the phone's engaged because he's on the phone to somebody else. So there's a ton of different reasons why, even if that person is willing to talk to you, that he might not be available to actually talk to you for lots and lots of different reasons. You know, when I used to work a database, you know, we had like lots of, you could put categories in for why people didn't talk to you, and it was like in a meeting, on leave, you know, all of these sort of things, so that you categorize them, so you could kind of go back and say, oh yeah, the last time I called you were in a meeting, or you were on leave, or whatever it was. But I think because
I suppose if you've got 100 people, or say it was 100 people, you're able to ring 100 people. If you're only of those 100 people you call, 90 are ringbacks.
Yeah,
and so they go on to the following day. So getting through a larger number is just
turns, don't you?
yeah.
Well, I think your 200 to 1 shot is generous, to be honest. Like if I go back to 2013, 2014, where it was, I literally did it day in, day out. I was looking at about 100 dials a day on, you know, and I was whipping through them. But on 100 dials, I got through to who I wanted to speak to on about 10% of occasions. So on 100 dials, I had 10 chats with the right person, of which about 10% of those were what I call good chats. You know, 9 chats were like nice to knows, thanks for calling me, not interested. But at least I got through to the right person. Those, I'd say, you know, 10% of the 10. So one good chat a day. But if you're dealing with B2B and it's a decent sort of ticket item, one good chat a day is a result. You know, because that's 20 sort of good leads a month. That's not 20 deals a month.
You don't celebrate for half an hour.
Yeah,
unless your statistics.
But if I was to do 100 dials today, I would be absolutely over the moon if I actually got through to who I was trying to speak to on 10 occasions. I think it's beyond just the whole numbers thing. I think the culture's changed. I think, you know, my experience being in an office now, if a phone rings, it doesn't mean you need to pick it up. Whereas, like, you know, 10, 20 years ago, 10, 20 years ago, a phone rings in an office, everyone's looking sideways, going, "Someone's going to pick that up? That's serious." Like, it was a culture, like, you know, you don't leave a phone ringing. Like, we got. I remember like 15 years ago, where people used to have, "Oh, we've got a policy in the office: 3 rings, and it's got to be answered," and things like that. We all remember these policies that used to be around. Now, a phone rings, it's like, I haven't got an appointment, so it can't be for me. and the phone's become a tool which I find people expect an appointment. They need to expect it to ring, you know. And I'm not just talking about business either. This is almost like the same in my family life. I can't just call me mum, you know. Like if I do, it's not that I don't just expect her to answer it. And 9 times out of 10, I'll get a message back saying, "I couldn't answer just then. What do you want?" You know, and it's not because people are rude. It's not because people don't want to talk. And like you say, I do think business is personal, and people do want to have these conversations, but they want to have them on their own timescales. They don't want them to just suddenly pop up in their life. And, you know, I liked what Alex was alluding to. Like, I'm against the whole thing. It's a numbers game, because I don't think it's a qualitative process anymore. I don't think it's about quantity. It's about quality now. And Alex made that point very clearly and very, very correctly. The phone will never die. You know, like SEO is dead. We've had all these false horizons before, but the phone will always be there. But it's more about quality now. The idea that you can just bang it until it gives you a result is a fool's errand right now. You need to use it effectively, and conversations will still happen, but the idea is that they're done the right way, and you're focused on quality conversations, quality calls, which, if you do it the right way, they're all diarised, and people are expecting you to call.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, you know, that it's not the elephant in the room, because that's why we're doing this. You know, the whole thing about live and this is, whilst it's a conversation, yes, it's tantamount. I suppose it's a live podcast in a way. It's just a bit of a delay when you're talking, but the point of this is the way in which that quality conversation can begin. You know, the whole networking mantra, know, like, trust, all that kind of stuff. How they're going to know about you? How they're going to find out about you if you're never around, and if it's just a once in a blue moon hoping, you know, shot at speaking to that business, because if you don't get there first time round, forget it. And I think, you know, even with the stuff that we do, you know, with the emails that we send out, people self-segment. They want to listen, they don't want to listen. That's fine. And if we're looking at the looking at reaching people. We kind of settled on this thing about going live and delivering something of quality that people can dip in and dip out of, and therefore the content has been created, and the prospects can see whether or not they like or they would want to work with you at some stage now or in the future. I think that's something that's not really been available before. It's got to be nailed down. It's got to be a webinar. You've got to, if you want to come and if you want to kind of look at us or engage with us, we'll take you on a webinar, but you won't see my face. You'll just see the PowerPoint slides, typically. And there's no option for anybody to be anonymous in order to start to get to know that company. So I think it's kind of looking at this process, this overall process, and obviously with Alex, it's as part of this jigsaw puzzle, is being able to identify exactly the types of people that you have dealt with in the past and why you would want to work with them and sell to them, and getting that data. But then I would say understanding the history of telesales and new business development, which is this kind of 100 to 1 or 200 to 1, this thing about trying to communicate with people, and that numbers game, and also being aware that 1% of your market are probably going to be looking at any one time. But if you're selling chocolate bars, your market is millions. But if you're selling high-ticket e-commerce software, you're talking potentially hundreds or maybe thousands, but it's much less. And so therefore there's this requirement to try and reach those people. And I just think that there's, in my 30 years in doing this, nothing's been available for B2B. There's been no methodology, no mechanism, no facility, ability or tech that has enabled you to do it, unless you want to go on television. And this just narrows it down by doing streaming, but being able to communicate with your ideal market en masse, and literally doing this at scale. And that's your bag in a way, Alex, in terms of data. And it's, I suppose, to kind of not talk us through, but share with us, what have you experienced in the past of people looking for stuff? How do they, do they go for a shotgun, scattergun approach, or are they more strategic in their requirements for data?
I'd say it's quite a healthy mix of the two, to be fair. So there are a number of people that is scattergun, and it very much comes down to their products. I know you mentioned about the personas earlier, and that is it's a big thing about the persona, and tailoring your message to the right person, hitting them at the right time, all the old school stuff on that front. But there are some products at the moment that we've seen, particularly with the current situation, where it is a scattergun. Now, in the past, where they may have been solely focused on telephone, that's been more difficult. So we've seen a bit of a shift to more people buying email. However, again, in the last 2 months, we've seen the shift change again slightly, that people are more interested in postal than they are in telephone numbers or email addresses. So we are still seeing people doing different things. And my personal view on postal at the moment, it's a really, really good way of getting in front of people, because the telephone goes, as Dean said, it goes and you can ignore it now. Email marketing, most products are, you're in a saturated market, so therefore people are getting lots and lots of emails about the same thing, and they might shut off to it to a certain extent. Yes, there'll still be people that will reply, and you can make your email marketing work for you. But postal, you don't get much post these days. So if you've got a really nicely designed postcard or something that's slightly quirky that you're putting on someone's desk, they're more likely to look at it and take note. Not only that, if it's something that's really has taken caught their eye, they're unlikely to throw it in the bin. They'll stick it in their drawer. And then that can have two things that come off the back of it. One, they're going and clearing out their drawer. They have a look at it again and thought, actually, I could do with XYZ product. Alternatively, that person is then recycled with the replacement coming in, looking in the desk, thinking, oh, what's that? That must have been important because they've kept it, and therefore they investigate what that product, that service is, and you get another bite at the cherry with a new contact that will hopefully get in touch. So postal, I think, is something that people really need to consider as well, because it's so few and far between at the moment.
I mean, I like post. I mean, I like post. I don't get a lot of post, not anymore, and so it's almost like it's novel to get something in the post. It's and then be, I suppose, relatively critical. But post can be quite expensive if you're looking at doing it at scale, because we've still got that primary factor of 1% of your market are looking at any one time. And it's kind of trying to hit them at the right time with the right message, I mean, I've done thousands and thousands and thousands of direct mail stuff, and yeah, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You've still got low percentages, which is standard for direct mail, and this is why, I mean, I think lots of businesses have tried lots of different things, and I would say a lot of them they're not very sophisticated in their what's available. Exhibitions, can't do them. Cold calling or direct mail or email. That there are very few things that businesses can do to reach out to try and attract new prospects, even just to get their message out there. And whilst I like direct mail, but to do it repeatedly or at scale would be expensive, especially if you've got a market that, I don't know, like we're going to talk about in a minute, about 10,000. If you've got 10,000 names, you're not going to do a direct mail to 10,000 people every week, and that's kind of where we are with this live streaming, of being able to say, come and watch our show this week, and if what we're going to be talking about is this, and here's our schedule for the next 6 weeks. If we don't see you next week, we'll see you the week after, and that goes out again and again. Doing something similar to this, that type of thing, and I think because it's not been very sophisticated, there's this, I think, tendency for people to think that this is complicated because it is sophisticated, if you want to look at it that way. But it's the reach is beyond anything that they would ever get. Send out 10,000 emails at a click of a button of a mouse.
I think the most complicated thing for people is the mindset. Because going back to the direct mail and all these things, I was brought up on the whole direct marketing sort of like way of lead generation. It's 40% list, 40% proposition, 20% in the copy and how you package it, and that kind of covers your email, your direct mail, your prospecting. It's like, right, here's your proposition, here's your list, here's your script, is your copy, and that kind of is that mentality, if that makes sense. I think what's complicated about this kind of thing for most people is they're like, well, this is all lovely and that, but where's the deals? Telling people what's interesting. If you're in a campaign mentality, I call it campaign mentality. If you're in a campaign mentality of, right, I've sent my proposition to this list with this copy, I know that at the end of that, that's my leads. But if I do a live, I think people struggle with, well, that doesn't make any sense. Like, where's the leads? Where's the lead gen? And I think that's the most, because like you say, the technical, getting it set up is actually relatively easy once they've got it in their head that this makes sense. And going back to like the way I do emails, I kind of got rid of the campaign mentality a long time ago, because I don't know if Liz can share any numbers of her specifics, but everyone I speak to will say they get 30, 40, 50 prospective emails a week. And they're all based on that. This is the list I sent it to. This is the proposition. Do you want to buy it? And there's some sort of a call to action on all of these emails, because it's what I call the direct marketing campaign mentality. And the success I've had with email is by sort of like getting rid of all that campaign mentality and thinking, oh, you work in this industry. Here's something interesting. Come and check it out, which is a bit more along the lines of what we're doing here. Here's something interesting. You're in the industry. This is relevant to you. Come and check it out. Now, all of a sudden, that one email in a sea of 50 or hundreds, which has all got a call to action on it as part of the direct marketing methodology, it's like, well, that one email stands out. It's like, well, that's interesting. Yeah, I do want to know more about that. I am interested. I'll check it out. Especially, and I know we haven't really touched on it much in this episode, especially if it's a low level of entry. They don't have to give you their email. They don't have to give you their phone number. They don't have to put their head above the parapet. They could just come and check it out. And the relationships I've developed that way, I think are fantastic. And I don't understand how more people aren't doing it. The only thing I can say in my head is because people are stuck in campaign mentality of the old-fashioned direct marketing.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, you know, we look at the sales process and how long it takes. You know, people want leads, but we know, because of all the stats that are out there, you know, I think it's like you got to get 7 to 10 touches. They've got to see what you're putting forward 7 to 10 times before something becomes familiar. You go, yeah, okay, I get that, and you go, but 1 in 3 get through because it's been deleted, didn't see it, were, you know, wrong mood, blah blah blah. Which means, if let's call it 10. You've got to produce 30 pieces of information or content to get somebody's interest, and accept that 2/3 of them are going to just disappear or fall by the wayside. And the reason being is that you don't know when they're going to be in the market for something themselves, because the driver to buy that B2B product is based upon, is it going to make me any money as a business owner, as opposed to B2C, which is, do I want to buy a chocolate or not? Or those trainers are going to look good on me. So there's different drivers for why they're going to buy something. And I think that, you know, looking at that overall logic, it's, you know, I was told before, you know, years ago, it's a numbers game, it's a numbers game, it's a numbers. Please, sir, please teach me how to manipulate the numbers and make them work for me. Or just get on the phone.
But
just
the
keep doing
buying cycle, but isn't the buying cycle, I mean, B2B, typically the buying cycle has got to be like 2 to 3 years. And by which I mean, you know, from a business's point of view, you know, if they're looking at things strategically, they say, well, actually, what we want to do, say, for example, it's a phone system or upgrading the computer system. That's not something typically that is done within maybe a 2-month period. You go through a process. I mean, one of my biggest deals that I ever won when I was selling phone systems took me about 3 years. It took me 3 years to get that deal. And I've been talking to him. The guy was lovely. But 3 years to go from first